Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Unleashed. This week, we dive deep into the intricate web of challenges surrounding American elections. It's a topic that goes far beyond who the Republicans will run for president in 2024. Our democracy is at a crossroads, and the decisions we make now and the work we do now will shape its future. Here in Colorado, our Democrat overlords and even some Republicans have declared our state as the gold standard for elections. After seeing how the sausage is made as a candidate for governor, I would suggest it might be fool's gold. With a critical presidential election coming up next year, I wanted to tell you why I'm concerned. One of the best things I've read, and I've read a lot on the topic, was a thought-provoking article titled "Unrigging Our Elections" by Marly Hornik. It was published back in May of this year, and the piece shed some light on how America's electoral landscape has been transformed in recent years and why the choice of a presidential candidate might not matter as much as we think. Now, Marly Hornik paints a vivid picture of a multifaceted problem. It's a propaganda-laden news environment, biased big tech censorship, and privately funded groups influencing election systems. But it doesn't stop there. We now live in election season with millions of mail-in ballots flooding homes, often sent to outdated addresses in a country where 11% of residents move every single year. What's more, sophisticated partisan turnout operations funded by activist billionaires, including Jared Polis, have the power to sway these ballots in selective ways, making election results unpredictable. It's a system where concerns about candidate quality become almost irrelevant. The recent 2022 midterms serve as a case in point. Despite very favorable conditions for the Republicans, the results were horribly disappointing, especially in Colorado. The GOP won the popular vote nationwide by a 3% margin, but still fell short in critical races. Now, was that solely due to bad candidate choices, or is there something more sinister at play? The article suggests that the Democrats' ballot harvesting operations have reached new heights of sophistication, enabling them to overcome the enthusiasm of informed voters with tactics that target the ignorant and unmotivated. But what about the claims of voter fraud? While evidence suggests it's a real concern, focusing solely on fraud may just be a distraction. The real challenge lies in being outspent and out-organized, especially here in Colorado. The article argues that some ballot harvesting operations are technically legal or operate in gray areas, making it crucial for strategists and lawmakers to address malicious intent. Another critical issue is the influence of outside actors, like Facebook-turned-Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who spent over $400 million on COVID election grants. These grants disproportionately favored areas with high concentrations of Democratic voters, raising questions about their impartiality. Additionally, the Electronic Registration Information Center that I've talked a little bit about on Unleashed, it's called ERIC, was created to clean up voter registration data and has raised concerns about data security and potential misuse for ballot harvesting. Look at the players behind it who fund it. Some Republican states have even withdrawn from ERIC due to these concerns. I talk about the dark money trails and concerns about ERIC with Ned Jones of Election Integrity Network in episode number 3. I highly suggest you go give it a listen to learn more about how Colorado is a key player in both of these critical issues. Now, friends, it's essential to acknowledge the role of misinformation here. With manipulated news outlets and those trying to ask the hard questions being silenced, suppressed, and deemed election deniers, the question of integrity within our voting systems is nothing more than clickbait and so-called conspiracies. Recent controversies like the censorship of Hunter Biden's laptop and his supposed transfer of millions to the big guy have exposed the depth of this problem, raising concerns about the fairness of elections in a propaganda-laden environment. So, how did this play out in Colorado? Again, check out episode number 3 of Unleashed, where we did a deeper dive. But here are the top lines as a reminder. The 2022 election should have been about solutions to the difficult issues working men and women of Colorado face, like rising gas prices, unbearable inflation, soaring crime, and our children who are suffering right now. Obviously, it wasn't. Things are declining rapidly here in Colorado, and voters check the box for the party responsible. From day one, the biased media didn't really ask substantive questions about the many failures of Joe Biden and Jared Polis on these issues. Rather, they continuously asked questions meant to divide and to distract us. The Democrat-funded media in Colorado had a job to do, to drive Democrat outrage over Trump, abortion, and climate change, and then tie all of us conservative candidates to those issues and drive election distrust in Republican voters so that they wouldn't bother to show up and vote. 70-ish% of Republicans in Colorado voted, but we can't win here with numbers like that. We've got to drive that into the 90s. Polis and the Democrats know that. That's exactly what they wanted. And I've said it here before, but I'll continue to beat this horse until people see and act on this problem. Let's look at the numbers. We have 4.4 million voters registered in Colorado, but only 2.5 million, a little over 50%, voted in the governor's race. About 2 million people in Colorado did not fill out the bubbles on a ballot the Democrats made sure plopped right in your mailbox. So indeed, Republican turnout was dismal because our voters don't think the elections are fair, especially in Colorado. They didn't think their vote would count. So why make the effort to show up? And of course, it doesn't help when our slimy Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, sends ballots to 30,000 illegal immigrants and takes power away from the county clerks when she changed the rules right before the election. Or when she shut down inquiries that could help us trust the process again, like she did to me and a candidate for State House in Douglas County, Kurt Huffman. And as for the issue of Douglas County, here's the recap. Kurt, who ran for re-election in the State House in Highlands Ranch, lost despite it being a Republican plus 10 district in red Douglas County. And as for my race, Douglas County, my home county where I live and work, the numbers were just weird. Kurt and I both landed at a little over 49%. All the other Republicans were closer to 55%. So we asked for a recount since the margin was very slim right after the election. And Jenna Griswold convinced our Republican county clerk to shut the recount down as we wanted it to be done, just as it was about to start. Then, said clerk came back at us with a $212,000 bill to even take a peek at the ballots. So how's that for instilling confidence in our election? We're still working to get the information from our Republican-led county clerk's office, but don't think we have given up on finding the cold, hard truth of this story, folks. And there may be nothing there, but then why are they so weird about letting us have access to the ballot and the ballot images, which we just finally got, and the other information around the election here? If everything is so peachy keen with our elections, then why stop an honest attempt to instill confidence among voters here? Why hide the ballots? The bottom line is this. Perception is reality when it comes to election integrity. And the perception among a lot of voters in Colorado and nationally is that something is not right. In a recent survey, only 46% of Republicans say they trust the American election system. Republicans were 5 times as likely as Democrats to say the 2022 midterms had significant fraud. The results suggest voter mistrust is really focused on voting by mail. About 51% of Republicans and 35% of independent voters feel that ineligible voters are turning in ballots and that some voters are turning in more than one ballot. On the flip side, Democrats are more worried that eligible voters face obstacles to voting, like a voter ID law making it difficult to vote, or voters having to stand in long lines. But Democrats overall right now tend to trust the elections. But here's the thing, my friends, as I've said before, even though there's the suggestion that Polis and the Democrats cheat here in Colorado, the reality is that they don't have to. Over the last 2 decades, they've masterfully built a political machine here that requires nothing more than money and control of the systems. They have both. Read the book, The Blueprint, or watch the Rocky Mountain Heist on YouTube. Let's take ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting in Colorado is perfectly legal. Us conservatives shouldn't be mad that it happens. We should be mad that our side stinks at navigating it. We literally have no apparatus in place here to do it. And we certainly don't have the money that they do to work the system. Democrats are more than willing to do the tedious, expensive work to legally identify and harvest ballots to win elections. They have a month-long election to do so here in Colorado, and they have dirty voter rolls that pinpoint exactly who they need to pester with their paid force to turn their ballot in so that they can get the win. Their job is to call you, email you, knock on your door, offer to take it for you, or pick it up if you're going to vote their way. If you're not, they ignore you and obviously don't make those efforts, and we don't do it on that side. So Colorado law allows political operatives to collect and return up to 10 ballots at a time, as if there were any way to enforce such a law. So they can go pick up 10 ballots at a nursing home, drop them off in the drop box, go back to the nursing home, get another 10, and then bring them back again. And the Democrats have an army in Colorado of paid workers to get the job done. I've heard numbers like 4,000. As Election Day nears, if polls show that their candidate is still behind, but there aren't enough Democrat voter ballots to harvest, that's when same-day registration comes in. We're one of the few states where you can register and vote on the same day, even on Election Day. So if a pesky citizen that the Democrats know will vote their way isn't registered, no problem. They can help them do just that up until 7 p.m. on election night. That is assuming that their politicized nonprofits haven't already registered the voters. It makes you think, are there any groups on our side that are effective at voter registration? I haven't seen that here in Colorado, especially as a candidate. See, Colorado sends ballots to everyone in the state, regardless of whether they request them or not. Our clerks don't clean up our voter rolls very often. In fact, Colorado was sued by the organization Judicial Ballot for being so bad at cleaning their voter rolls. Judicial Watch announced last year that Colorado's Secretary of State agreed to a settlement in the lawsuit, alleging that Colorado failed to remove ineligible voters from its voter rolls. Now remember, that's the key to all these operations, is having dirty voter rolls. More people on it than they actually should be. The lawsuit alleged that high registration rates and other voter roll metrics indicate an ongoing systemic problem with Colorado's voter list maintenance efforts. As part of this settlement, Colorado will report to Judicial Watch on its yearly progress in cleaning up its rolls for the next 6 years. Doesn't solve the problem completely, but it helps provide transparency. And remember, again, we are the gold standard, right? Not only does our corrupt Secretary of State and governor say that, but so do many Republicans in Colorado. I was berated often by many of the conservative pundits for mentioning our voters' concerns on the campaign trail. Not to mention the media, of course, hammered me on it. I told the naysayers over and over that many voters would not turn in their ballots due to their concerns, and that's exactly what happened. Remember that turnout rate of 70-ish% for Republicans? They stayed home, a lot of them, almost a fourth of them. We can't win elections that way. So to recap, Polis and the Democrats in Colorado know exactly which voters they have to get to turn out. And our corrupt Secretary of State Griswold gives them a leg up by making sure it's easy peasy to see which one of them has voted every day during our month-long election and which candidate is winning. And remember, they have invested so much time and money in voter data here for decades that it's not hard to know how you voted or how you will vote. Polling is getting really specific about that, and artificial intelligence tracking all kinds of stuff. The cherry on top is their ability to weave distrust in our elections on the Republican side and silence any Republican candidates from talking about it. So voila, Republican voters don't even turn in their ballots. In fact, polling before the 2022 midterm showed 45% of Republicans didn't trust the election. Again, I'm going to keep saying that. A large percent of registered Republicans in Colorado did not vote last fall, about 25%. That's your recipe for disaster. So to right the ship, the very first thing we have to do is clean up our voter rolls. Our guest today is going to tell us why that is mission critical and how to get this job done before the presidential election. She's done it in New York and uncovered massive potential fraud. So excited for you to hear about this and understand exactly what we need to do to fix this problem in Colorado. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Unleashed. I am so excited and honored to have Marly Hornik from New York on today. She's got an incredible story about the work she's been doing in election integrity in New York. I want all of you to hear about this and get inspired to do the same in Colorado. Marly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Heidi. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Colorado. It's good to be here with you. I have to say right off the bat, I do not work in election integrity. I work in election validity
Ooh,
because elections integrity means doing the right thing when no one is looking, and elections can't do that. Only people can do that. So I'm on a mission to change everyone's mind about election validity.
I like that. I will start using that going forward. And no one knows better than you about the validity of our elections, especially in New York, after the work you've done in the last couple of years. Tell us how you got started on this journey.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I was on a Telegram chat with some other folks, kind of picking apart the 2020 election, and we were thinking, oh, I wonder if there was anything in New York, but we figured no, because it's so deep blue. Why would they bother? Why would they take the risk of cheating in New York? I mean, if you have your dedicated diehard voters, why commit crimes and expose yourself to risk like that? So we figured we wouldn't find anything, but we just decided to go ahead and request copies of the state and county voter roll databases since we were anyway home as non-essential workers. So that's where we started. I think probably in a week or two in, one researcher called another researcher and said, "Oh, I looked at this spreadsheet you started filling out and you filled it out incorrectly. This number is incorrect." And they said, "No, your number is incorrect." And at that point, we started to realize that one of the documents we had downloaded from the Board of Elections that reported what the final results were for the 2020 election. Now, this is September of 2021 that we started, that the numbers were still changing. And so one of them had downloaded it on one day and gotten a different number than someone downloading it on a different day, nearly 10 months after the election was certified as accurate.
Wow.
So yeah, pretty amazing. So that was the first red flag where we were like, huh, maybe all is not right in New York. And we started our adventure.
So, Marly, how did you decide to navigate that afterwards? Like, what was the next step in making sure that you were going to create an analysis that was effective, but also meaningful, and that you had the right team around you? Because all of that sounds great in theory to just dig in and start working. But from the projects I've worked on in this area, it's very different when it plays out.
Right. It doesn't, you don't always have things fall into place. And I think honestly, I can't answer your question exactly because I didn't know what I was doing when I first started. I'm the first person to admit that. I had been homeschooling my children in the woods for about 15 years. And literally, we have a little dairy goat homestead. We have our gardens, and then we have a big patch of forest. And I love to be in nature and be with the plants. And that's where I mean, I remember when people would start calling me and say, "Oh, I have this background or I have that background." And I say, "What's IT?" I don't know. Like literally. So, so I don't know that I have a great answer for your question, but I will say that what I did do from the very day that I committed to taking this role, which was kind of an unusual thing anyway. I don't know why anyone asked me to do it. So that in and of itself seems like one of those divine providence coincidences in creation that you couldn't have anticipated the significance of something that you decided to take on. But in the moment that I decided to lead a New York team, I said to myself, if I'm being asked to do this and I take this on, the reason is because this is a miracle and we're going to have a crushing victory. I have no idea what that's going to look like. I have no idea even what that means or in what arena. But I said, every day I'm going to wake up as though this is the most important thing I could be doing and I'm going to take it seriously and I'm not allowed to doubt. And so for whatever reason, I guess I conveyed that effectively to enough people and I convinced everybody. But we did go through some volunteers who didn't agree that we should be doing everything as though we were preparing evidence for court, even though we were like literally just downloading documents and calling each other and saying, "Did you see this?" or whatever. And I was like, "Okay, get provenance on that document you just downloaded, get provenance on that data set, write down the code that if you just found a query, if you just found something, Write down the code that you use. Don't just start another query. Write it down right now, because I just had that knowing. I said, if I'm involved, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, if this is what my creator is telling me right now, you get busy and you lead this team, it's because the team is going to win. I'm very excited because although I resisted the idea of leading a national team for months, as my co-founder of United Sovereign Americans will attest, Terry Howery, I'm very excited that that's what we're doing now, because everybody should be a part of this. Every state should have this data. Every state should have this evidence, and it's work, but it's not impossible.
So Marly, what is the evidence? Like, what have you found in all of your work?
Well, we found so many things, and I would say the most important things that we've investigated fall into one of four categories. First of all, are the voter rolls accurate? The National Voter Registration Act of 1993 is very clear. It has four purposes. The third purpose is to ensure election integrity, which of course I don't even believe in, but anyway, I like it. And number four is to maintain accurate voter rolls. So when you look up the word accurate in Merriam-Webster, just in case your head is still clogged with like a lot of Rumble videos, if you look up the word accurate, it means free from error. Okay, so accurate is not a vague thing. It's not amorphous. It's not flowing. It means free from error. So that means our voter roll registration records are supposed to be free from error. So we had already discovered, stunning anomalies. We didn't know that they were violations yet until we read the law. But in terms of whether or not the voter rolls in New York State are accurate, we have 1.5 million counterfeit registrations where you have a unique particular voter who appears in the database more than once as with a unique state ID number, right? So one person has been split into 3 or 4 or 25 voters who appear to be different, but they're actually the same.
Wow.
We have 1.5 million records that are purged with no purge date. Now, if you have a registration record that's purged, that means that person can never get a ballot. There's no circumstance under which that person can legally vote. And it can't be cured at the polling site. There's like nothing you can do about it. If the purge record has no purge date, but there's votes in the voter history, there's no human being alive, not me, not Heidi, and not the New York State Board of Elections, can tell you whether those votes were cast before or after the purge. These are fictitious registrations that are being maintained in the database for the purpose of fraud. It's very simple. And in fact, the Department of Justice knows that. They have a document that they wrote in 2017, the 8th edition, Federal Prosecution of Election Offenses, calls these records deadwood and says they have to come out of the rolls because the only reason they're in there is to be used for fraud. It's like, wow, what a relief. I'm not an election denier. I'm right. The voter rolls have to be accurate. So those are some examples in that category. Now, why does it matter? Why does looking at voter roll anomalies and uncovering them as fraud matter? Because a lot of people are thinking, hey, if they didn't vote, then it's not material. It wouldn't have changed the outcome of any election, but that's not true, because false registration is a serious federal crime with severe penalties. So if you take the argument away from any particular election outcome, if you're not saying, hey, we think the wrong person won an election, but we're saying, hey, we think this voting system is violating our civil right to an honest, fair election, and on that basis, we're questioning everything you guys are claiming as factual. That's a totally different argument that has a long and strong history of successful adjudication in the United States of America, I'm happy to say. So those fake regs matter a lot. Then you take those, you're looking at the voter rolls, right? How convenient. You got this one document that gives you everything you need, and it's an official federal document that's protected as part of our national security infrastructure. So when they say it has to be accurate, it actually has to be extremely accurate, and it has to be stringently protected under the most severe laws, basically, for that the federal government has for any kind of cyber management. So basically, once you identify those registrations that you can tell they either, they're invalid or they're illegal. They don't meet the standard of an eligible voter. So why are they in there, right? They have no address. They their registration date is clearly fictitious, like January 1st. Any of these issues are red flags. They're red flags for fraud, according to the New York State Comptroller, anyway. Then you look at their voter history, right? Now you have these sets extracted. You look at their voter history. Did they vote? Well, if they voted, now we have open questions. And in New York, I'll say in the 2022 general election, we have 750,000 open questions.
Oh my goodness.
Yep, 745,000 some votes that do not meet the standard of eligibility and yet were counted. So that's the second question. The first one was, are the voter rolls accurate? The second one is, were the votes counted from eligible voters? And you can use the voter rolls to check that. And then the third question is, did the number of votes counted equal the number of voters who voted? Which typically your Secretary of State or your Board of Elections, depending on how it's managed in your state, is going to have a reported vote total. Somewhere on their website, they're going to have an official document that says this is how many people voted in Colorado. And you open that up, and then you take your voter roll database, you query your database to find out how many people, according to the raw data that is the official record under federal law, how many people does that document say voted? And if they don't match, now we have another set of open questions. In New York in 2020, we have 338,000 open questions in that category. 338,000 more votes counted than eligible voters who voted. So, yeah. And then the last issue, which is really, boy, I just love this one. When I learned about this part, I was so happy. There is in the Help America Vote Act from 2002, there is a reference to an error rate for federal elections, that all federal elections must meet this standard. But you kind of have to dig through the law and look at how they define a voting system, and you have to look at how they define a vote. And then you realize that the error rate that's allowable for a federal election is extremely stringent. Okay. There's a good reason for that, right? In America, our founders, our genius, enlightened founders, set up a system where there was no, it's like Thomas Paine said it best. It's just go straight to it. He said it so well. In America, the law is king. This is from Common Sense. They knew somebody had to be the ultimate authority in a new nation. There has to be somebody who says, here's the line in the sand. But they didn't put a person on the throne. They put the law on the throne. And they said everybody is underneath that. Now, how is the law controlled in America? It's very simple. We, the people who are the sovereign of this nation, we are the rulers, but it's chaotic. It's too difficult to have everybody have an equal say all at once. It's chaos. So we choose those people to temporarily grant the privilege of writing and enforcing those laws. We choose them based on how well they align with our personal philosophy, our morality, our beliefs, our priorities, and our fundamental dedication to the principle of equality under the law. That is the American ideal, the American principle, which is unique. And so if the connection between the people and those representatives through honest, accurate, valid elections is broken, that's when the law goes rogue. It goes out of control. And that's exactly the description of New York. It's probably the perfect description of Colorado. So the accuracy of our elections is paramount because we have to have continuity of governance. Everybody has to have faith that those elections is it's like a rope that is holding these three elements in tight position. We're codependent, and it has to be that way. So that's why the laws regarding errors in federal election are extremely stringent. They're allowed 1 in 125,000 ballots in error.
Oh, wow.
In a federal election. So New York's 2022 election had 5.6 million votes cast. That means they can make 48 mistakes.
Just 48.
That's it. They made 750,000 mistakes.
Oh,
and they certified it as accurate. There's over 5 million invalid or illegal registration records in the database, and they certified that as accurate. And they can't. You can't certify that as accurate. And you can't certify it as compliant with the state and federal laws because it's not compliant. The law says it has to be accurate, and it wasn't. So it's not accurate, and it didn't follow the law. But the arrogance of our chief election officials, state by state, to go ahead anyway with their pen and sign their John Hancock on that document that says, yes, I personally and officially attest that everything regarding the administration of this election comported with all relevant federal and state laws, and that the outcome that I am reporting is accurate. Oops.
Goodness gracious. So what has the response been to these findings from officials?
Oh, they're so thrilled with us, right? They're like, wow, New York Citizens Audit, you guys are heroes. Wow, thanks for putting tens of thousands of hours of personal time aside to do this incredible research project. No, in fact, right now, the GOP and the DNC in New York are strategizing how to put as many of us in prison as possible for the alleged crime of impersonating them, which is absolutely hysterical to me. I mean, it's not funny. It's really very vicious and awful. But I think it's hysterical that they're accusing us of trying to be like them. We're like, no, we want accuracy.
We don't want to be like you, for goodness sake. Not at all. Not in one.
You're not doing a very good job here. We don't want to be like you.
So where do you go from here? Like, where do we hold anyone accountable if you can't get the elected officials to do anything? If you can't get the RNC or the DNC not to do anything, that's not shocking. But well, it is shocking that even like I'm a conservative in our own side isn't willing to stick up for us. And
they're trying to get us arrested.
Why? Why are they trying to do that?
My personal take, and this isn't the most popular one of my perspectives. I try to explain it in a way that isn't accusatory exactly, because I'm not. When I use the word addict, I'm not talking about people who are substance abuse or addiction and the tragedy of that. But I say they're addicts. They're completely addicted to the system that they're entrenched in. Mm-hmm. They can't identify that it's broken. They can't identify the amount of harm that it's causing at this point to everyday, average, beautiful human beings and American citizens, and the amount of destruction it's creating. They're in such a state of addiction that they can't identify it. And when you have an addict, the last thing you do is beg them to solve the problem. It's a delusional idea that they would be able to, right? And now I'm talking about someone who really is addicted, someone who's tragically become addicted to some very damaging and destructive substance, and you love them and you want them to feel better and you want them to recover, but you don't put them in charge of that recovery. You take them, you put them in rehab, you pray for them, and then you got to go into their apartment or their house or whatever. You got to clean it up.
Yeah.
You got to go through their phone and get rid of all those lousy people that are talking them into this. The sane people are going to have to do this job because the crazy people in office can't. They're totally hooked.
That's a great analogy.
In New York, what we're doing is we have submitted all of this evidence. We bundled it up because I made everybody keep provenance on everything, and because we've created all these reports. It's like the queries, the actual code, the programming that we use to extract these records from the Board of Elections data, all of this, little mini reports. And we took all of our top level findings and we made it into a big package and we sent it to the Board of Elections Division of Election Law Enforcement. And we said, you have 10 days to go through this line by line and explain every single one of these problems. And if you can't, basically see you in court. And we will also be submitting it to the Department of Justice, to the Public Integrity Division. Again, we have literally zero expectation of that producing anything other than the evidence that they have abandoned the people and that they also need to be included in our court filings. You see, the way that this has unfolded is to prove, again, the voter rolls have to be accurate. That's federal law. It's not about a candidate. It's not about a party. That's about upholding our constitutional guarantee to choose our representatives and be governed by consent. The votes that are counted have to be from eligible voters. That's in the Constitution. That's who votes in America. And that's, again, it's got nothing to do with party. It's got nothing to do with policy. It has to do with our system of representational government. If we, the people, are not choosing our representatives, the system breaks. It's not America anymore. And so what judge can honestly look at 5 million registration violations, clear registration violations, not away from any candidate and away from any party and away from any election outcome, and say, this looks accurate. This looks like the system that protects all other rights, right? Because the right of suffrage is the first right of all American citizens. It is the right that protects every other right. You can't have school choice. You can't have medical freedom. You can't have physical integrity of our young people. I mean, what in the heck? You can't have that if you're not in charge of your representatives. The right of suffrage is the first right. And so the idea is to bring this to judges basically state by state. We want to do it in Colorado. We want to do it everywhere. And we have 27 states already participating through United Sovereign Americans, because everybody gets it. It's like, wow, this is not about Trump. It's not about Biden. It's not about China. It's not about machines. It's not about anything that is difficult to explain or possibly has an out. It's about arithmetic and the law. And it's about our constitutional guarantee to government by consent. So that's the goal. And then obviously, taking that final icing on the cake was the New York 2022 election valid under federal law. Again, that 48 ballots in error. Let's see how they did. Oh, it looks like they exceeded it by about 750,000 errors. It's pretty hard to say that's accurate.
How does this get ignored? I mean, I get it politically, like nobody wants to deal with it. It's like a hot potato, but you've done the work, you've got the evidence, you're asking for resolution, whatever that resolution is, and it's getting ignored or shoved under the rug, however you want to say it. What needs to happen next for you to see progress made in New York?
Well, I guess that's how I ended up forming United Sovereign Americans with Harry Howry. And that website is unite4freedom.com, unite4freedom.com. Because we know that no matter what we can prove in New York, if we don't do this everywhere in America, it won't stop anything in 2024. What we have to do, not me and just you, but everybody listening to this and all of your friends and everybody who's going to get involved, we have to save the 2024 election. And we have to get judges across America to agree that the system as it stands is not producing an accurate result. It's not producing a result that can be certified and people have confidence in. And so therefore it has to be fixed before 2024. That does a couple of things. It basically puts the election officials on notice through the courts. And this is the easy, I mean, I'm not saying that's going to work in New York. That's why we did this for the national, because it might not work in New York. As simple and clear as this is, it might be so corrupt in New York or California that we can't get this. A judge would say this, yes, this looks accurate. 750,000 errors in excess of the legal standard looks accurate. I don't know, that could happen, but it might, there's a lot of states where that won't be tolerated. It won't happen. And what we have to do is not just fix New York. We have to stop them from breaking the law everywhere in America for the 2024 election. Otherwise, I think everybody knows we're going to lose everything. We could lose everything. We could lose our country. We could lose our freedoms. We could lose the liberty that our founders dedicated themselves to ensuring for us and for all of our future posterity. That's real. And I don't see anybody coming in on a white horse with a solution. I think we have to do it. It's a ton of work, but we know how to do it. And everybody can come in to United Sovereign Americans. That's why it's right. Like each of us is a sovereign American, but we have to come together. We have to unite. We have to pool our skills. We need attorneys. We need data analysts. We need project managers. We need spokespeople. We need everybody. This is our country. And this is a beautiful opportunity for all of us to not just fix New York, like you're saying, but to fix this everywhere. It's not a magic wand, but it's a legitimate way for every person of every party who sees kind of like, I wonder what the heck really is going on, to get involved.
So Marly, here in Colorado, we supposedly have the gold standard for elections, and we are not allowed to question anything that happens at the Secretary of State's office or in the county clerk's office, no matter who the party is that's in charge. I found that in Douglas County, Colorado, where I live, and I tried to help a candidate do a recount right after the election, and we were shut down by a Republican county clerk, and the Republican county commissioners did nothing to help us or support us. So we're working through that, and we're going to get the data eventually, hopefully through the Freedom of Information Act and through law and suing if we have to. But as a standard citizen, just listening to this podcast, how do they engage? How do they make sure they're getting involved with the right group that's going to do the right work? Do you have someone in Colorado on the ground, or do you need people on the ground in Colorado to help get this done?
Well, there are a number of people in Colorado who have identified this as something they want to be a part of and are coming to our conference. United Sovereign Americans is having a conference September 15th through 18th in St. Louis, and all are welcome. It's a training conference, but you're also welcome to come to the Tuesday night calls. What I do on those calls is I just read everybody the law, because I know you're not going to read it on your own, and that's okay. I'm a homeschool mom and I don't mind being helpful. So we get on the call and we read the federal law together. And it's like a light goes off for everybody, because you're in this arena, right? Where I call it like the rumble. It's like rumble syndrome. You're watching all these different videos and all these perspectives, and some of it's information warfare and some of it's disinformation and some of it's just, exaggerated, and you just can't tell. And so a lot of people who are very intelligent have disengaged from that, or they've gone deep in, and they're kind of tangled in it. When you read the law, you're no longer there. You're in a place of clarity. It's like, oh, really? That's the law? Wow, that's so simple, because election law is procedural. It's like A, B, C, D. Here's what you do next. It's very easy, and you don't have to be an attorney. And it's like a light goes off for everyone. And all of a sudden we realize, hey, we don't have to be over here in Rumble. Let's take our country back now. Like, this is easy. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, but it's not hard work. I mean, I don't want to paint it as like, we're just going to go for a walk together down a path lined with beautiful flowers, but it's like, it's doable. It really is. It's very approachable. And you start to realize, wow, I can contribute. I mean, if I can contribute, a lady who was off in the woods for 15 years with my kids and my goats, if I could come in here and do this, believe me, you can. I didn't even know what IT was.
It's probably a better way to live. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, well.
Marly, so I will definitely put the website and make sure everybody knows about the Tuesday calls and the conference. As far as your confidence in turning things around before the 24 election, that is coming up really quickly. People need to move fast, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, we plan to file litigation in as many states as possible by March. But this is, remember now, okay, you were saying how there's all these different groups in Colorado. Remember, each one of those groups has done extraordinary work already, right? So it's not like we're starting from square one for Colorado or for Virginia or for, all these other states coming in. One of the reasons that I knew in my heart of hearts that this is going to work massively is because the American people have already done 85% of the work.
Huh.
People all over America have canvassed. They have gotten the data. They've started analyzing the voter rolls. They've done so much. Like you, they've tried to participate in recounts. We've learned a lot about our voting system. We've learned a lot about the administrators of our voting system, and we have already amassed a like a Mount Everest, an American-sized Mount Everest of evidence or anomalies, issues that could be turned into evidence. And that last final step is critical. I don't want to downplay it. It's very critical to take those anomalies and turn them into bulletproof claims that are they're unequivocal. There's nothing they can do. If we bring those into court, there is no possible backdoor for any of those claims that will say, well, it's pretty accurate or it's accurate enough. And again, remember, we're not saying that an election was wrongly called. We're not challenging an election, which historically in America, there is almost no precedent for overturning elections or for nullifying something that has already been certified. And there's good reason for that. I'm not going to go into it, but there's good reason. If you come on those Tuesday calls, that's one of the things we discuss. There's a lot to learn about this. I've learned a lot and I love to share it with others. But when you go in and the goal is to say, here's our constitutional guarantee. Here's the accuracy standard that's designated and determined by the federal government. And here's what happened. And here's, by the way, here's the person who certified it as accurate. Does that all look okay to you, ma'am or sir? That is a totally different kind of argument. And I'll tell you, even just the recent article I published in American Thinker about, I think that it was titled, Was New York's 2022 Election Valid? So in the article, I just covered everything in the article I covered here talking to you today. But the interesting thing is, like, people are all of a sudden their eyes are opening and the fog is lifting and they're like, whoa, this is the way to explain it. This explains what we're experiencing in America. And now they want to see it done in Colorado and they want to see it done everywhere. So I don't think it would be right at this point to just say, oh, this is the person in Colorado who's contacted me, because I didn't ask their permission to do that, for example. But I'm very hopeful once we pass the conference, because I know at least 2 people from Colorado are coming to that conference. Hopefully a lot more of we will come and we can make the Colorado team even stronger right then and there without having to do any further legwork. But one way or another, we'll get this done, because I know that Colorado has amazing Canvas data and other kinds of information. I don't think that we're looking at a months-long process. We're looking at getting you guys into this litigation thread very quickly.
Good. Well, Marly, we're certainly going to keep track of this and watch your progress. And thank you so much for putting your heart and soul into this. I think all of us want to make sure that our country is headed in the right direction, and making sure our elections are valid is a key part of that. And I just want to say thank you from all of us, and we will do what we can to make sure that Colorado is part of that equation and that we get the right people on board to head that effort.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, everybody is welcome. The welcome mat is down because this is our country, and there's no one else who's got and I'm not saying me, but I'm just saying there's no magic wand here that's going to come in. We have to do the work, and we can do it. We really can. It's just beautiful. And I'm so excited to see it happen.
Well, me too. Well, thank you so much for taking your time. I know it's precious, and good luck with these attacks that are coming against you. I know you're going to be fine, but it'll make for some comical conversations about how they're trying to do this. So, well, boy.
It's pitiful, they just want to keep the control that they've become addicted to, and they can't. They're not allowed. There's so much at stake and so much beauty in this world, and they just can't be in charge of it anymore.
Ditto. I completely agree with you. Well, thank you again for being on Unleashed, and we are going to unleash the folks in Colorado to make sure this happens.
Thank you, Heidi.